We welcome now one of the people who's going to be called upon to decide what the United States should do about the Saudi crisis, Representative Darrell Issa, 9-term Republican representative from California. He serves on the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and he joins us today from Washington. So, Congressman, thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thank you, David. And I think the president said half of the story. As you know, yesterday, the Secretary of State and others in the administration began doing the first steps, the ones that can be done by this administration unilaterally. And, of course, as you reported just a few minutes ago, with the CIA director coming back to brief the White House, and I expect to brief Congress thereafter, we'll begin to understand how far this goes, where it goes, and then appropriately, is this a rogue operation, which would have one response, or does it go all the way to the top, in which case there would have to be more severe repercussions? So
you've had quite a few colleagues, including on the Republican side, especially on the Senate side, make some statements about some sanctions that should be taken, such as things as suspending arms shipments, which the president's made clear he doesn't want to do. Do you have any initial thoughts about what range of sanctions might be appropriate?
Well, I do, and I don't want to speak for the administration, but Congress has to balance the human rights question, for which there has to be a response that's appropriate, and a national security question of the balance between Iran and the Gulf. So I do think that Congress is going to have to be measured. But for my colleagues, often they run to the microphone to talk about a decision that for which there aren't all the facts. This doesn't look good for Saudi Arabia is an understatement, but we do have to get to the facts. One thing I learned doing investigations for years is don't prejudge the outcome, because it limits your objectiveness and your credibility. I don't think this looks good. I certainly could jump to conclusions, but I'd rather get to the facts so we figure out the right answer for what is clearly a crime.
And apparently we're moving toward that, with the CIA director having gone over there and coming back to give the president a report. We should be able to get to the facts. It appears fairly quickly. Certainly President Erdogan thinks he knows what the facts are. But give us the broader sense of the foreign relations ramifications. As you said, there are other issues here, such as Iran, such as Turkey. We have historically been an ally of Saudi Arabia over Iran, certainly at least since the Ayatollah came into power. Is that something that will persist, or might that be compromised by this development?
Well, I think there's some complications in the region, and one of them that I think everyone needs to understand is this tense relationship between Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and the U.S. You might remember all the way back in 2003, early in President Erdogan's right after his election, the first thing he did was stop our troops from using Turkey to go into Iraq. So we have had a problem with a NATO ally there that has only gotten worse. Israel has had a problem with a historically strong trading partner who's only gotten worse. So and Turkey has looked to Russia in slightly greater amounts, particularly during the Syrian crisis. So I think when we look at foreign affairs, again, human rights violations have to be dealt with, and we should do those. But that's one basket. National defense, the balance between our friends and our foes, often put us in cooperation with somebody like Turkey, who has not been a good NATO ally recently, somebody like Saudi Arabia, who certainly has human rights questions that need to be addressed. And so, again, Congress comes back with the president, with Secretary Pompeo. We need to have a balanced approach. And I'm comfortable both in this Congress and thereafter that between the executive branch and Congress, we can get to that.
Let's talk about trade just for a minute, because, as I say, you've been in Congress for almost 20 years now. You're about to take a new job come January, as I understand it. You're going to be the new director of the United States Trade Development Agency. That is something that the Trump administration, at least at one point, said they wanted to shut down. Are you going there to run that thing for a good long time, or are you going to close it down?
Well, I'm certainly joining the president's trade team to help promote what has been a stellar more than 6 decades of the United States helping the rest of the developing world get competitive, get opportunities for their people. And that part of our trade relationship doesn't get enough credit, whether it's Exim Bank, OPEC, or specifically the Trade Development Agency, which has a mandate to help developing countries, and we do so from Honduras to Panama and around the globe. One of the things that America is known for is we do things that are in the best interest of countries around the world. That's not true of China. It's not true of Russia, that often seem to be completely self-dealing. And so joining the president's trade team, I hope to have a positive effect on all aspects of trade, but certainly this agency has a mandate that Republicans and Democrats agree on. It's one of the reasons that Congress looked at, if you will, the initial budget and went the other direction, increased the funding and 2 years in a row. And quite frankly, there are efficiencies that I hope we can get to during the Trump administration in trade. But the elimination of any agency is done not by eliminating that which it does good, but finding a way to do something better.
Can that trade team that you're joining both promote exports the way you want to do, which is your mission, at the same time other parts of the administration are really shutting down imports from other countries, or at least imposing tariffs, I should say, on them? Because as a practical matter, there's retaliatory actions being taken against our exports. Can we really ride the horse in two directions at the same time?
Well, you can, and it's the same as Peter Navarro and Larry Kudlow sit in a room together with the president discussing possible opportunities and tools. And they both agree that these tariffs can be a tool. They do disagree on what the long-term benefit is. And I'm clearly in a camp on record for a very long time that ultimately, what the president said to the Europeans is, you eliminate your tariffs and non-trade and trade barriers, we'll eliminate all of ours, and we'll have real free trade. If that's where the president is, and I know he is, then I'm with Larry Kudlow and I'm with the others in the camp that just want to strategize, how do we get there, and how do we show the world that we're not erecting barriers, but we want other countries to tear down unfair barriers, whether they're prohibitions on our products or tariffs.
So finally, Congressman, give us just a second or two on politics. I mean, you're leaving your district. It is a toss-up by most accounts right now. How difficult is it for a Republican to win in California, a congressional seat?
Well, all of our contested races in California, there's about 6 of them, are being outfunded anywhere from 2 to 6 to 1. And yet they're holding up. For example, Dana Rohrabacher is exactly where he was millions of dollars in attacks against him ago because he stands for things that the people of Orange County understand. And we're seeing that up and down. So will there be close races? Absolutely. But is California a write-off? No. These members have stood the test.